Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In this video, I want to talk about how without God, there would be no ultimate objective standard for morality. The prophet Jeremiah was preaching in a really difficult time. He had people that did not care about the Lord and really abandoned God's law and became their own source of authority for how to live and basically doing whatever they thought was best. And Jeremiah says something very humbling in Jeremiah 10 in verse 23. Jeremiah 10 verse 23, he says, I know, O Lord, that a man's way is not in himself, nor is it in a man who walks to direct his steps. I am not good at math. I don't really like math, but there's something I like about math, and that math is very satisfying. It's satisfying because there's always an objective answer. If you ask, what is 2 plus 2? The answer is 4. You cannot really argue with that. You cannot argue, well, no, I think it's 5 or I think it's 6. There's really no room for personal opinion or personal feeling because there is this objective thing called fourness, right? There is such a standard as fourness, and that's what 2 plus 2 is. It equals this fourness. Now, you can talk subjectively about how, well, I like the number 4 better than I like the number 3. I think 4 just kind of looks cooler on the page. I kind of like, how you draw out a 4 and the sharp corners and all that. Okay, I can't argue about that. If you like the number 4, that's fantastic. That's a subjective, personal preference, personal opinion, feeling-based argument. But if, on the other hand, you want to say, well, I believe because I just like the number 4 better than 3 that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, it's not based on what you like. There is an objective answer. The answer to 2 plus 2 is 4 because of the objective standard of fourness, not because you like or prefer the number 4 to any other number. So likewise with morality, God's goodness is like fourness. God's goodness is this objective standard that is above all of our preferences, that stands above all of our opinions and all of our feelings, so that we can say, well, I feel like it wouldn't be right or it wouldn't be wrong to do something. Well, that's great that you feel that way, but does it match up to the objective standard of goodness that comes from God? Psalm 119 says this. Psalm 119 in verse 68, he's speaking to God here. He says, you are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. God is the very definition of good. He is the standard of goodness, this objective fourness, right, or goodness that we can measure our morality by. Just like you can measure your math by the objective truths of mathematics, so too we can measure our morality by the objective truths of God and His standards of goodness. Now, if you get rid of God, if you get rid of the concept of God, then you get rid of an objective standard of goodness. You're getting rid of the objective standard of fourness, and so now 2 plus 2 becomes whatever people want it to become. And if God is not the standard for morality, then what is the ultimate justification for morality? I want to be clear. I'm not saying that atheists or people who don't believe in God can't be moral people, can't do any good deeds or anything. No, that's not the argument. The point is there's no objective standard by which to measure morality, and it becomes a subjective issue. So someone might argue, well, I think that culture, should decide what is right. Kind of the majority rules sort of thing. Okay, well, whose culture? Whose culture is right? Cultures come up with different standards of right and wrong. So who's to say who's right and who's wrong? Now, some people say, well, the majority rules. Well, what if the majority decides something is wrong? I mean, look back in America at the way slavery was in the 1800s, and the majority, thought slavery was fine and treating African American people like they were less than human was just fine. Are we going to say that they were right? No, we're going to say that's how society felt at the time. That was their opinion. But there was a standard of goodness. There was a standard of fairness that was objective that said, no, that is objectively wrong. Or if somebody says, well, I think, survival is really the key, and so we just need to do what's good for everybody's survival. Well, first of all, why is survival a good thing? You might argue, well, that's just common sense. Yeah, but some people think that our planet takes precedence. Some people think that human survival is actually hurting our planet, and so the best thing to do would just be, to get rid of all the humans and preserve the planet. How am I going to then tell them that they are wrong about that? How am I going to say, I'm sorry, but that is wrong? We're not going to be able to. We're going to say, well, in my opinion, I think, survival is the best thing. Or what if somebody says, like Hitler, look, I think what's best for the human race, I think that what's best for the survival of everybody is to get rid of a certain group of people that is hindering us in some way. And so they're going to kill all these Jews. Again, it becomes subjective when we don't have an ultimate standard for morality. This is what happens when we abandon God. We get rid of the concept of goodness that stands above our personal feelings and preferences. We become the authority in our lives. We start to direct our own steps, thinking that we know what is best for us. And just like Jeremiah's time was a horrendous time of evil and wickedness, so too will our time be. And our time really is, because people have abandoned God. They're doing what they think is right. Everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes. And Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 10:23, it is not in man to direct his own steps. I sure hope that that's helpful. Lord willing, I'll see you in the next video.